does it matter if the people in Russia are discontent and professional sufferings, but they're not going to do anything? Then it's kind of irrelevant talking about it.
It matters. It does matter a lot. Now, I'm going to give you an example. July 2023, Wagner, ЧВК, the private army Wagner, Russia's strongest and biggest army besides the Chechens. The owner of the private army, Yevgeny Prigozhin, rebels. He stages the mutiny. He takes 5,000 troops and moves on to Rostov-on-Don, and he captures Rostov-on-Don in a matter of 3 hours. There's a fight. Some forces, perhaps the army, tried to defend Rostov. It lasted for 15 minutes, and that was it. Heard the shootings myself. He captures Rostov, and there's uncertainty in people. No one understands what's going on. And then on the second day, people start come out in large numbers, in thousands, to greet Wagner.
This is The Global Gambit.
Welcome back, everyone, to our conversation with Konstantin Samoilov of Inside Russia. This is part 2 of a two-part conversation. We touched on a lot of the economics and the internal disruptions of the Putin regime in the first half. So if you want to know what Konstantin and my rather blunt assessments are, do go and view that. But otherwise, what I wanted to do here is pick up on what Konstantin was making very vivid at the end, which is the sheer rumbling of instability and insecurity within the Putin government, within the regime, within the Kremlin, the corridors of power, as you called it, Konstantin. So one of the things, obviously, that we're seeing or have seen increasingly is this very unrealistic perception Putin seems to have of the battlefront. And that's because the military doesn't really want to give him the full picture. Kupiansk is under battle again. Right, the Russians claim to have taken it, and then Zelensky appears there, and also data quite clearly shows that the Ukrainians are still fighting over it. So, as we go to 2026, what are you expecting in terms of Putin's sort of almost people becoming more and more fearful of telling Putin the truth or the reality of the situation?
I don't think things will change in that department. I don't think they will be more fearful to tell him the truth. They've been doing it for the 3.5 years, and they're professionals at that. I think that things will continue. There was one general, and he was supposed to be a very good general, if there are good generals in the Russian army, General Popov. And he rebelled against the system about 2 years ago. Basically, in a very direct, harsh manner, told then Minister of Defense Sergei Shoigu that enough lying, and Gerasimov, the Chief of General Staff, enough lying, let's face the harsh truth and let's be honest with the Commander-in-Chief. And if you don't tell them the truth, I will. And he's the, war general. He was fighting in the front lines, and a lot of soldiers had respect for him because he cared for the soldiers. Well, they instantly fired him. They sent him to overseas, like Syria, far away. And 1 year after, he was arrested, charged with a phony charge of some fraud of tiny amount. And he was sentenced to 7 or 8 years in prison. And now he's in prison. That's the only person who tried to tell the truth to Putin. So they don't like people like that. And there are no people like that in that system. People like that have been ejected by the system. So I don't think anything will change. They will continue telling fakes and lies. The situation in the front lines is bound to worsen because it's not getting any better, okay? And I'm not a big expert on anything military, but I just use common sense. If you look at Bakhmut and if you look at Chasov Yar, okay, Chasov Yar is a village or a small town that Russia is fighting for right now. And Chasov Yar is about 16 kilometers, 10 miles from Bakhmut. And Bakhmut was captured in May of 2023. That's how far Russia has moved in over 2 years. Now, does it tell you anything? It does. To me, Russia isn't moving anywhere. It's stuck. It's been throwing all the resources of the country, all the resources it has. It has run into a great budget deficit of nearly 10 trillion rubles. It's been pumping the military-industrial complex with money. Its situation inside Russia is absolutely incredible. There are so many millions of people work for the war, providing hardware, providing everything that the army needs, but they just can't move further into Ukrainian territory. That's it. Checkmate.
And then when it comes to what you can expect, I mean, from the decisions that means, because one of the biggest defining features of 25 was the growing internal feud between the FSB and the military branch. We've touched upon that in the first part, but I wanted to know what you think might happen going forward next year.
KGB is, well, it seems to be the winner, and I think it'll win. The KGB is flexing muscles. It's becoming stronger and stronger, and the biggest feud has been between, well, two feuds. First is with the army, like you said, and the second is with the President Chief of Staff Office, that Russia's Great Cardinal has been in charge of building a Russian political system, placing all the officials into their seats, allowing people to, take positions and so forth. There's one person controls, and he is basically the Great Cardinal of Russia, and he stands by Putin and whispers into his ear, and then he controls the entire world of Russian officials, political parties, the United Russia, the pocket opposition parties, everything, this skeleton of Russian political system. That's him, and he's been under a great attack by the KGB, and the KGB is winning. His people are get arrested by dozens every single week, and the arrest continues. Not just the arrests, deaths too. The generals, 3 generals were blown up in Moscow. Federal minister died. Very suspicious circumstances. It will continue. The KGB will be becoming stronger and stronger. Russia is not inventing anything new here. It is a very classic scenario for totalitarian states. It's just following the footsteps of other countries in similar situations. So the secret police will get stronger and stronger, and at some point it'll come to Vladimir Putin and someone will say, "Look, Vlad, you'd better tell us what we tell you to do. Well, you'd better do what we tell you to do, because if you don't, we'll just recommend you do that." And then the thing is, Putin doesn't have anyone else to rely on, and the KGB will be so strong that other agencies, the federal police, the National Guard, they will be either controlled by the KGB, or they're going to be so insignificant and the KGB is going to be so strong and it's just they'll be calling the shots. That's where the situation is heading to, and that's how I see things will unfold in Russia. Perhaps it'll happen in 2026.
Maybe. Do you think that what do you think will be the biggest defining features of 26? Because 25, I think, has been reflective of the Russians being incredibly caught out by the Ukrainians' innovative strategies towards attacking further in. It's brought much more the war closer to home, and the idea of Russia being protected by Putin is much more of an illusion. But it's also demonstrated the Russians' capacity to develop their own industry and capacity to respond. And even though it's incremental, they are putting greater and greater pressure on Ukraine. So do you think we'll see more of the same next year?
I think things will be much different. If you asked, you might have heard many people when talking to you and they tell them, look, Russia is not well. And they would counter by saying, what do you mean? Russia is doing great. Look, people have jobs. There are plenty of products on the shelves of the stores, plenty of food, no food lines like in the USSR. You go to Moscow, things are well. People are out celebrating festivals. And so Russia is okay. It's normal. Okay, I think the biggest difference next year will be this pretty picture of Russia doing well will end, and they will be replaced by another picture by Russia doing not so well at all. There will be delays in salaries of federal employees. They are happening right now, Pyotr. Can you guess which federal employees are not getting paid now?
A very senior federal level.
Close. Judges.
Oh, wow.
They stopped paying judges. Because judges are very rich people in Russia, and the officials know that. They don't they don't depend on their salaries, okay? And their salaries is not that big, and so the judges are multimillionaires, all of them, and they simply stop paying the judges, okay? So judges will not protest, they will not complain to anyone, they will not go sue, so that is just the beginning. They've started closing down schools, not just laying off teachers, but closing down entire schools. And we're going to be seeing so much of that in 2026 because simply there's no money. We're going to be seeing galloping inflation because they're just printing money like crazy every single week for the past few weeks. They've printed every week. Think about that. From 1 to 1.5% of entire GDP of Russia. They print around 3 trillion rubles every single week to cover the budget deficit. The effects of that will be seen in from 4 to 6 months, okay? Towards late spring, early summer, holy moly, the price is going to go up. The inflation is just going to be hitting. Now, they're going to devalue ruble because they have 2 tools left. First is to print money, the printing press, which is already hot. And then the second is to devalue Russian currency. So whatever they still getting exporting fossil fuels, it's going to be more in rubles. Now, well, we're going to see a great devaluation of Russian ruble, and that's going to make people's lives miserable, absolutely miserable. And that is the biggest thing that we're going to see in 2026. And of course, there will be intensifying political fights. I think right now we're seeing bulldogs fighting under the carpet, and we're not seeing much of it in the public. We will see that in the public. They will take it to the public eye. They will openly fight next year. I think that's 2 biggest trends to look towards in 2026.
I was on mute. And we have seen rumblings of that, haven't we? We have seen indications of this growing discontent amongst the polity, the inner circles, whatever, the political establishment within Moscow. But one of the things I'm also interested in, of course, is the public sentiment, because a lot of Russians are used to dealing with hardship. It's one of the main things that is always emphasized, that Russia will not crack, it will not succumb to external pressures easily. But when it's internally and the inadequacies are growing, you've got a deepening sense of normalcy not being there. Do you think we will reach a tipping point next year? Not in some grandiose way that suddenly there's revolts and sort of widespread rebellion across the country, but do you think that Russian people will be more genuinely getting tired of the war and pressuring the government to accept more of these peace deal offerings from the other side of the table?
They will definitely be more fatigued, much more, but there will be no tipping point. I don't even understand what the tipping point is. Everyone gets so tired of the war, they just take it on the streets and start protesting. That's not going to happen. No, but there will be more and more of, you say, rumblings. Oh yeah, that's for sure. There will be more and more discontent here and there. In general, the situation is going to be much more. You see, if you get to Russia right now, the first impression you get, and that comes from people who haven't been to Russia for quite some time, for years. The first thing they understand is the tension in the air, the stress, looks in people's eyes. Russia, entire country, you can feel stress in the air. There's going to be much more of that. And then don't forget, there's a huge factor. More and more, I can't even call them veterans. I don't know who they are. Call them whatever you want. Those people who fight in Ukraine, who sold their souls for money to the devil to take up arms in exchange for, sum of money and go fight in Ukraine. So they're going to be coming back more and more. And the Russians don't like them. They're very, very afraid of those people because each one of them comes back with PTSD and unpredictable, very violent, and they commit so many crimes. They murder, they rape. That's going to contribute a lot. So There will be a lot of tension. I would say tension, very serious tension in Russia in 2026. I think that's the word. That's going to be the word of the year. Stress and tension.
What's the okay? So if there's not going to be a large scale pushback by the Russian population towards the Kremlin, and there's going to be growing discontent and rumors and tremblings and rumblings, etc. So what? If it's not going to mean any actual impact, then
well, you said it. You said it yourself. Russians are very resilient to hardships. They're professional sufferers. They will be suffering a lot. They will be complaining to each other in the kitchen, saying, "Oh, you know, the government hates us. It doesn't like it's so difficult. It's become we don't have much money. We don't have this and that." And they're going to be doing a lot of that. But I couldn't have said it better myself. You nailed it.
Does it have then? What deal, what significance does it hold?
Significance, what exactly holds significance?
What does it matter if the people in Russia are discontent and professional sufferings, but they're not going to do anything? Then it's kind of irrelevant talking about it.
It matters. It does matter a lot. Now, I'm going to give you an example. July 2023, Wagner, ЧВК, the private army Wagner, Russia's strongest and biggest army besides the Chechens. The owner of the private army, Yevgeny Prigozhin, rebels. He stages the mutiny. He takes 5,000 troops and moves on to Rostov-on-Don. And then he captures Rostov-on-Don in a matter of 3 hours. There's a fight. Some forces, perhaps the army, tried to defend Rostov. It lasted for 15 minutes. And that was it. Heard the shootings myself. He captures Rostov, and there's uncertainty in people. No one understands what's going on. And then on the second day, people come out in large numbers, in thousands, to greet Wagner. And when Prigozhin announces that he moves on to Moscow to topple Putin down, to grab his power, people start celebrating. They start saying farewell, go and do it. Okay, in thousands. Now, they weren't discontent. They weren't that unhappy back in 2023. Now, if it happens in 2026, then people will actually contribute. Now, they'll get to the point where it would be very dangerous for the state to allow any event of significance to occur. I call such event, they can change the course of the entire country, the Black Swan event. It can be a mutiny. It can be massive failure of utilities in Russia. It can be, arrest of a not politician, but popular figure. Could be anything, really. But when there's enough tension in the air, when people are angry, they're not going to stage, they're not going to take initiative to stand up and change things, but they will follow. If something happens, an event occurs, and they will see that something is happening, they will follow. This very same thing happened in August of 1991, that people followed because they were so unhappy with the way things were going in the USSR. And when the Gachapa, the coup was staged by the KGB, then everyone stood up and went to the streets, and they followed Boris Yeltsin, the very popular politician at the time, who basically told them, hey, you know what, follow me, and everyone did. So the very same thing can happen in Russia. I'm just modeling certain things here. I'm trying to model of what might happen. So I think that this discontent and unhappiness does matter a lot.
Okay. No, that's fair. I like to challenge just on these things, because we can say it a lot, thinking, imminent collapse, everything's going to break down, it's all unraveling, but then that's not happening. And so I like to pick up a little bit on these specific sub points and debate them a bit further. But then, okay, so one of the things we've also been seeing and pivoting a bit is in recent days, Putin's growing, I think, irritation. He's rattled by the Europeans because whilst Trump is obviously trying to get Ukraine to capitulate and has a lot of sympathy or patience or admiration for Putin's government, for Putin's regime, Europe doesn't. And Europe is now increasingly willing to go out on its own, be defiant, speak out against both America, as we're seeing with these EU visa sanctions now, but also with obviously Putin's provocations and actions over the European continent. Do you think that's, to me, because it is to me rather, a demonstration of Putin's frustration that he knows he's facing a problem in Europe, and we're going to see more of him trying to coerce Europe next year, and there he doesn't have a choice. He doesn't have many options he can use.
Well, I don't think he's very frustrated with that. I think he's a KGB officer. Okay, he's trained in this secret warfare, and then he knows how to outrun, outsmart, and outlie everyone. And I think that he considers Europe a challenge, something that he needs to deal with, and he's been trying to deal with it. He has his people of influence inside Europe, inside every single country in Europe, and he's been using them very wisely, very effectively. He's trying to break Europe from inside. I don't know whether he will succeed or not. Frustrated? I think he's just dealing with his difficulty as it appears. That's all.
Okay.
I mean, if you compare Putin now and Putin a year and a half ago was crushed. He was a pariah. No one would speak to him. Everyone considered him losing the war, the bad guy, the invader. Now Orban says, I don't even know who invaded who. That's epitome of Putin winning. He was welcomed in the USA, given a military parade, given the royal treatment. He comes to China, he speaks with world leaders, the Chinese, the Indian. He tries to make deals. His envoy flies welcomed in the USA, insults Americans at their own home, and they don't do anything about it. They're like in lethargic sleep. He sends them chocolates with quotes of Putin where it says, well, destroy America, things like that, And the Americans don't do anything. That's winning. He's winning. He's winning. He's the winner, the victor, compared to 18 months ago, okay? Why would he be frustrated? He's celebrating. He's joyous.
Yeah, I don't agree with you, Konstantin. I think he is frustrated by Europe because they are becoming a obstacle to him getting what he wants. And you also said about last year, Russia being an international pariah. I mean, yes, it was more isolated prior to Trump's administration, but it's never been fully isolated. The Chinese,
much more than it is now.
Yeah,
you gotta agree to that.
% pariah. This is just, that's the Western media trying to overstate the reality of it. Russia had loads of options back then, but because the economic situation is deteriorating more, but on the other hand, the Trump administration have shown a lot of favoritism towards Moscow, the position has kind of flipped a little bit. But I do think that Putin, of course, he doesn't see Europe as a big deal. He doesn't see them in the same respect level as he does the US or whoever, right? They're not a great power to him. They are a small group of countries that need to be kept in line and dominated by bigger ones, right? He would have respected Britain if it was still the global empire. He might still respect France if it had the global empire. But because those two countries are showing greater, rejection of their imperialist past and the issues they're facing with immigration and so on, they're not. So Putin doesn't bother with them. But I do think as a collective, as a collective entity, Europe is becoming a bit of a nuisance for Putin. It's a bit of a just like sort of, he just wants them to bow down and do what him and Trump expect them to. That's what I'm trying to emphasize.
He's trying to take care of Europe. That's all.
Yeah, sure. And Europe's not willing to let him do that. But I guess, Konstantin, very last question then, as we look to next year. It's nice to debate with you sometimes as well. We often agree, but it's nice to have a disagreement occasionally. What do you think we should focus on? The Russian economy, Putin's internal state of mind, the war front?
I don't think that much will be happening in the front lines. The small incremental advances that Russian army does at great expense, at great rate of losing Russian men, it's not going to take Russia far. I think it's going to be stuck in the front lines. And two things that I'm personally am very closely watching is the power struggle inside the Kremlin is going to be the winner. The win for Ukraine will come from inside the Kremlin, not from the front lines. So that is number one. And Russian economy is number two, because it's all about the money. It's all about the economy. Putin, if he had enough money, he'd be winning. He'd be flooding everyone and everything with money. And he's run out of money. he did fairly well for 3.5 years. Now 2026 is coming, and it's going to be the stress test for him. And I know the outcome. He's going to fail. Yes, simply, the Russia is no good scenario for 2026. I certainly am looking at it with a large bowl of American popcorn right here. So that's what I'm personally going to be looking at.
Yeah, I don't normally use emojis in my titles or in the description of our YouTube conversations, but I think maybe a popcorn emoji would be very suitable.
Very, very suitable for this one, yes.
I might not even put a title. I'll just put, our names together with popcorn and shaking hands like that,
Well, you know what? You should title this conversation. I think it would be a good one. Everything is going to hell. And then, popcorn to watch it.
Yeah, I could do that. Okay. Very interesting to see how the YouTube algorithm interprets that. But everyone, thank you so much for watching this great conversation with Konstantin Samoilov, Inside Russia. As always, it's been an absolute pleasure doing these on the regular. And we both wish you, I'm sure, a very Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and a much more, juicy 2026, especially for Putin, but not in the way he sees life. See you next time.